Good evening. Welcome to Silver Slumbers, a channel where I'm tasked to help you get those soothing Z's that you deserve. I made a video before this that I'm going to select a winner, and to do that, I will put them in a randomizer. So as you can see on screen, I have randomly selected 10 of you guys. I place your names in a Wheel of Fortune style looking game. Once I click this button, we will all know who won. So here we go. I just want to say that I'm very excited and that this was a very close call. And there you have it. So we have a winner for the Treble U desktop speaker. Congratulations. I will be sending you a message here very soon. Enjoy the gift. I won't stop doing these. Help me reach the goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we will do another one of these. So, back to the thumbnail. Some of you may not know, but the government has finally publicly acknowledged the existence of aliens. Some call them UFOs, extraterrestrials, or Martians, or the green guys. But the government also discovered unearthly biology, whatever that means. It sounds like it was awesome news, so I had to share people's thoughts from the internet. Some say aliens have abilities to shape our mind from a distance. They appear in front of us, or blend within society. They're among us. We don't know. So in today's video, I'm going to be reading True Alien Sighting Stories, Volume 1. So sit back, relax, and close those eyes. And remember, don't get lost in the dark. Warning, some of these stories contain graphic content. Viewers' discretion is advised. I signed up to Reddit to share an experience I had a couple of years ago, but I guess I had to get a higher karma score before I posted. I'm very new to this, so I still have to figure it out. Anyways, it sounds not believable, but I had a direct encounter with an alien in my house. I'm in my 30s, and I live in California. Around the time this happened, my dog was starting to panic at night when I went to sleep. She's getting older, so I thought that she started to develop some kind of fear in the dark. But one night, she was so restless that I just left her in the bedroom to hang out in the house. I fell asleep and woke up a few hours later. There was an alien standing next to my TV, just staring at me. Keep in mind, this whole episode lasted about 15 seconds. I got the feeling as soon as I woke up that I wasn't supposed to wake up, and I wasn't supposed to see that thing in my room. It was about 80% the size of an average male. What struck me instantly was that it had human proportions. It didn't have some kind of giant head. The head was the same as ours, except it had very large black eyes. The tone of its skin was very dark marble, gray, brown, olive. After staring at each other for about 15 seconds, I just blacked out. And then I woke up very early in the next morning, and the room felt very weird. I was honestly terrified. I don't know if I can ever experience fear like that again, and I can't really explain why. The other part of the experience was that I did pick up information from it. And again, I got the feeling that that wasn't intentional. It was like accidentally hearing a radio transmission. I just picked up these things, all within a few seconds. That's a more complicated thing to get into. I too have some fascinations with space. It wouldn't be unbelievable to be able to explore if that were possible. But I have to tell you, the feeling I got from that being was very ominous. It wasn't good. And it was not good in a way that I didn't understand. It's almost like indefinitely would mean nothing if you tried to explain that to a horse. There was something bad about this that wasn't in the human realm of understanding. One of the things that I did pick up from this experience was that there are numerous species that are similarly capable, and some are better intentions than others. Ever since that experience, I do feel some kind of connection, like I can communicate if I wanted to. I'm fairly certain that I was not abducted or anything like that. I just knew that it was some sort of checkup and that it wasn't the first time. I've tried very hard to find any kind of similar accounts, but I haven't found anything. So I'm glad that you saw this post. My first encounter was in Miltontown, Pennsylvania. The Hail Bob comment was coming around, and it was a big thing because it doesn't come often at all. So working up with my parents' shop, they would always read the paper at lunch, and I would read articles as well. And so I would read about the comet and told my parents about it and continued reading. Another article mentioned a group of people who believed that aliens were following the comets and would abduct people to go to space with them. This made me laugh at the time because I was a skeptic, but I thought it was interesting. The night my father and me and my brother all loaded into a van, headed home to East Waterford, and it was dark out. Shortly after we departed, my father pointed out the comet in the sky, which was just amazing. A tail and color and everything. Then he says, look there. And he pointed at a light not far from the comet. This light was moving all around, not in a straight line at all, and appeared nearly large as the comet. So happened the moon was also in the sky, not far from the comet, and this light would move itself around the comet. The man moved over and appeared to go behind the moon and out of the other side and return back to the comet. Now my father was not as nearly as shocked as I was, nor my brother, because my father had claimed to see a ship once, and my brother believed in alien life. However, I was in total disbelief. I watched intently for the lengthy trip back home. And even then, I spent a good hour running around the property, getting as many angles and vantage points or any reasons I could find to not be real. How it moved, how it appeared to have curiosity at the comet and moon. It would seem to wander the sky, but then return to the comet and check out the moon. To me, it seemed like a giant living thing rather than a ship, and that was a bit terrifying. And then I remembered the article that I read and quickly told my parents about it. My father assured me that nothing would happen, and I couldn't believe how calm and nonchalant he was about it. The next day, I read in the paper members of the group actually committed unalived themselves because they believed that the aliens would take them to the stars, and I was blown away. Many years later, when I finally got the internet, I discovered that I am actually one of the thousands who saw it, and I also saw a comet that will not be ever seen again for a very long time. Needless to say is that spectacle changed my perspective in many ways, and I've had other encounters. Still, I like to think that these souls who sacrifice themselves are actually truly exploring the universe with other beings, and I probably missed out. But actually, I was just as fascinated with the life here, and so was in no rush to leave. Maybe next time. First thing about me, I graduated high school and went straight to college, but not mature enough in any way, so I ended up dropping out and going to the Army as a medic. I spent 4 years in the military and was stationed in Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. After I got out, I moved back to my home state and took a job working for my county, doing EMS for the 911 system. I spent 3 years doing this and eventually moved to the private sector. At the age of 28, I was an assistant director of a $5 million a year private EMS company. About a year ago, I got out of the EMS totally and now work for a corporation. I know the amount of money that I make doesn't really matter in any way, but a lot of people simply cannot respect someone unless they have a professional career to back themselves up. For my state, the median household income is roughly $58,000 a year. That's household income and not individual. I currently make $65K a year. I know I'd be in poor parts of the country, but I'm very comfortable for my area. I have a very promising career, and I'm not just some guy who went crazy and developed some schizophrenia. I simply wouldn't have maintained my career for the past 3 years if I had. I only posted this information because this will be cross-posted in multiple subreddits, and some people need to hear more details about this than others. So roughly 3 years ago, my entire life changed. A mantis being made contact with me, and this is the story of my life and everything that has happened since. And I need to state that, at this time, I was a total atheist because of past traumas. If there was a God, I despise him, and I would literally refuse to believe something if there wasn't scientific proof. So it started with shadows. I had to quit my job because I've done so well with crypto investments. So I didn't need to work. And I simply wanted to take a break after working EMS during COVID. That was just rough, guys. I actually thought that I developed some kind of severe mental illness for a bit because I would see things move out of the corner of my eye. I didn't believe in anything besides what I could physically see, so this was quite jarring for me. This went on for weeks. I wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I was being watched, and I look in the corner and there it would be, like a shadowy blob, just looking down at me. Well, after weeks of dealing with this and finally saying to myself, holy crap, dude, you've gone complete bonkers. I decided to try and test if I can physically interact with this thing. So one night, when I woke up and saw it, I grabbed my dog and pointed at the corner, and that's when everything changed. She walked right up to it and sniffed it. It was the first time I had a confirmation that something was happening from someone other than me, even if it was just a dog. So that's when I actively reached out to it. I would call to it, openly saying, I know you're here. What do you want? Why are you in my house? And then the dream started. Every single night I go to bed and I would sit in a chair on a beach, and it was always the same one. The beach I grew up at with my family. An old man simply walked up to me one day and goes, do you want to talk about the universe? Of course I was like, dang, yeah, I do. So we started talking. He told me all sorts of things that I found absolutely fascinating. He would ask me questions like, what do you think of water being alive? And then I would respond using human knowledge, and he would challenge my way of thinking. In the case of the water, his response to me saying that it wasn't alive. Every single thing a three-dimensional being puts into a body is alive. You have to take life to maintain life. The meat and plants you eat were all alive at one point, right? Every single substance of value put into your body was alive at one point. If that statement is true for all food, then why would you assume that water wasn't alive as well? It's vitally more important than food. Does it not give you more energy in life than any food can? I was kind of shook because although I didn't believe everything that he was saying, I didn't know how to argue with his logic. Everything I eat is alive because artificial candies are not technically food as you cannot survive on them. He was specifically talking about life-giving food, meats and plants that give us the basic nutritions to keep living. I simply told him that I'd think more about this concept later. That is just one example of the conversations that we had. This happened nightly for 3 months straight. Another conversation we had was about our galaxy. He stated that the galaxy is actually an upward vortex, and as we spin around it, we are physically moving upwards through different dimensions of space. And it was this conversation that had happened. He told me that statement and then asked what I thought about it. And that's when it hit me. I was thinking. Like, there I was, sitting on this beach, talking to this man, and thinking. But yet, I suddenly knew that I was in my bed asleep. How could I possibly be thinking in a dream? As I look over to ask him about this, he had the biggest crab-eating grin on his face, and he simply said, "Finally catching on, huh? It's time to wake up." And I said, "How is this happening? How am I thinking and controlling my thoughts within a dream. I, I, I don't understand this. And he responded with, well, that's the thing. You are not asleep, my friend. If you want to continue contacting me, then you need to begin meditating. If you do this, I will come back to you. And that was it. No more dreams. No more weird shadows. Everything just stopped. And yet, still here. And truly could not begin to understand what had happened to me. And I was sure that I had gone crazy. But I desperately wanted to talk to this man that had quickly became my friend. The conversations we had were amazing, and I was willing to try meditating just to have a chance to speak with him again. Even if it's all in my head, he was comforting me, and I wanted to do more with him, so I started meditating. The next 2 years became quite a blur. I went through so many changes that I couldn't begin to describe them. But I started talking through meditation, and he would come back to me in my sleep. But I had to genuinely try to talk during meditation for this to happen. He wasn't letting me use him as a free pass to not learn. And that's when he started telling me what he says in the truth of the universe. He says there are over 500 advanced civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy, and that the Galactic Federation is very real. He had to explain all this in human understanding for me to get it. He told me that 113 of these have done 113 different scientific experiments, definitively proving the existence of God, a divine consciousness, or the source as they call him. They call him the source because he's the source of everything. He said they expect humanity to come up to the 114th experiment because we are such a curious species and we are the next civilization that they will enter into the Federation. One of these experiments he explained like this. So, humans have now figured out quantum entanglement. It's very real. Quantum entanglement is a bizarre, counterintuitive phenomenon that explains how two subatomic particles can be intimately linked to each other, even if it's separated by billions of light years of space. Despite their vast separation, a change induced in one will affect the other. They said that they will develop a technology to literally latch into a consciousness. To them, consciousness is not local, and this is one of the key things they are here to teach humanity. So they simply waited as all these beings with these tags all died naturally. They didn't kill anyone for any experiment, and they watched as every single one of them did the exact same thing. They all went back to the same exact place in the universe, and then was sent back later into a new physical body, and they were able to physically go into things and meet them and actually remove the tag they had placed. Reincarnation is very real. That's just one experiment out of the 113. He told me that the solar system and Earth itself is moving in fourth dimensional space. This is a very physical change. Remember how I said that we are upwards vortex, going up into the dimensions? This is that. The actual space we are moving into is fourth dimensional, and they are here to help evaluate humanity's consciousness so that we will be ready for this very physical change that is coming. He says that every human is currently making a choice, service to self or others. This is a very personal choice that is made by your greater consciousness, which has all the knowledge of your past lives. You get to decide where you want to go. He said that there is a cluster of quasars at the center of the galaxies, and our solar system is coming to what we can consider perpendicular to these quasars. They are emitting gravitational waves, and as these waves have started to hit our solar system, the planet itself, Gaia, the Native Americans get that right, and she's very much alive. And many of the beings on the planet have begun to have a natural shift in their consciousness to help prepare them. These gravitational waves hitting us are what is causing the shift in the fourth dimension. This is a very physical change and short of straight up taking the Earth and moving her lower in the galaxy. It cannot be stopped. It's a total natural event that all civilizations go through. Humanity is rare in the sense that most planets are either one of the other, meaning the entire planet is service to self or service to others. They say that we are mixed with about 5-10% of the population has chosen or will choose service to self. Roughly 6% has chosen or will choose service to others, and 20% will choose not to choose because they are not ready to leave the duality that mankind currently exists in. They say that's why we experience such extremes of love and hate right now, so that we can learn which path we want to take later on. He preaches endlessly about unconditional love. He tells me to go love some more. And when I feel like I've loved enough, stand up, force myself to walk to a random stranger and love some more. Just love another person over and over and over. Honestly, guys, it's kind of exhausting. It's like, I'm human, bro. Doing that is actually hard. I don't want to talk to random people, and I sure don't want to have a mind full of words every second of every day. But he takes it beyond that, telling me to physically stop what I'm doing and address these negative thoughts. Think about why I'm having this negative thought. Analyze it. Understand why I feel this way. Then simply let it go. He tells me to practice this every single second. And if I catch myself not doing this, immediately address it. For 3 years this went on. I will be totally honest with you guys. In the back of my head, the entire time I was like, you've gone effing insane. But I cannot deny one thing. I was changing. It doesn't matter if this was all figment of my imagination. I was actually changing. No more chasing money. No more random hookups. No more yelling at people because they all made me mad. I was praying to a God that I didn't even know if I believe or simply know that he's there, because this being was so sure of it. And I couldn't deny that while I had no actual physical proof, I was actually changing. I was no longer having to force myself to be nice. It was just happening. I started volunteering. I started helping and giving money away. Just keeping enough to pay myself to have bills and to pay for food that I need to eat. I was genuinely trying to be the best human that I could possibly be. And then 3 months ago, something just happened. I need to preface this by saying that I understand how egotistical it sounds, but I'm just describing it as best as I can. But I went to it, what I can call it, as a evaluated state. I was not reacting negatively to anything. Like anything, guys. I had a random stranger, fully blown on yellow to my face, and I just smiled and told them that I loved them. 3 years ago, I had been into an actual fight over that. But eventually this state ended, and I came back down to earth. I suddenly realized how much pain and suffering is surrounding me. That's when it happened. One night, he said, start telling your story. Some things have changed, and we will need your voice later. Don't worry if they don't believe you. Simply reading these words will help their subconsciousness during the transition later. So I started talking on Reddit, but they kept pushing more and more. Talk more, be louder, tell people in real life. So finally, I was fed up. I was like, dude, I've never even physically seen you other than a weird shadow, or when you told me to take shrooms. I was high, that doesn't count. I've never taken them before I met this being, and the only drugs I do is occasionally smoking weed. I basically said that I'm not doing it. I have a good career, I'm a respectable man in my community. I know you helped me and I've changed, but why should I do this? And then he came to me, and I had just gotten home from work, as I've been working nights, so I came home and get into bed. And as I'm laying down, I just noticed a weird light. I had my windows closed, but it's daylight outside. And it was how you see light act weird as a car passed by my window. I even said to myself, look, that looks weird. It just looks like a car that went by, but I didn't see a car, or I didn't hear a car. So I just sat there watching, and it slowly formed into my face. It was right there in front of me, the face of the being that has been talking to me for 3 years. That being I had started to refer as my best friend. A legitimate, 100% praying mantis head. Just right there. I simply said, thank you for being my friend. I love you. He winked and then left. That night, he came and made a joke. They have quite the sense of humor. The very first thing he said to me was literally, well, you saw me now. Start talking, bitch. It was quite hilarious having an alien call me a bitch. By the way, he hates the word alien. He prefers to me to call him a being. He says, how can we be an alien and not belong when we were here first? So now, I'm here telling my story. The past 3 months have really kicked off. I've now met 9 different species after 3 years of only talking to them. I have more experiences and can speak on about them as well. But this is enough for now. I can answer any questions you guys might want to ask, but understand that I may simply say that I don't know because I genuinely don't know everything. Even with the more recent developments and confidence skyrocketing, I sometimes feel like I'm stumbling along in the dark with no answers. But I'm on my journey to find them and share them all with you. So please, ask away. I love you all. They gave me what they say is my personal proof. And here it is. Human beings are known for our straight lines because there are no straight lines. He said this is simply because of physical ways our eyes evolved to experience this 3-dimensional reality around us. But that's no straight line existing anywhere in the universe. So basically, we invented them. We aren't special or anything. We are just unique. We're just a unique way humanity evolved physically. Please be aware that this is a tiny fraction of what happened to me. It's impossible to write 3 years worth of information into one post and keep people's attention. Hey everyone, just thought I'd share a little bit. Please take it with a grain of salt because I don't have much evidence of my experiences, but they eat at me, so I just figured that I just shared this. My first abduction. It happened to me when I was a kid, as most do at first, even if I don't remember. For me, it was late at night, and I was in my room. They came through my window with a blinding blue-white light that had measured to be at least 15,000 lumens per square inch of my space in my room. It was absolutely blinding, and yet I could still see them in my room fairly clearly. There were 2 child beings wearing shiny, silver full body suits that seemed to shimmer in the light. They had almond gray skin that looked like it was thin, leathery frog skin, but also as if they were maybe slimy. At this point, I saw their eyes. They were large. They were skull-filling black voids that pounded the words, "Come with us," into my skull. It was like I was being hypnotized because I just went with them. I didn't even think, I just went. They floated me up into their craft, and this is the part that gets very fuzzy because I can't remember what I was seeing in the light of the craft. And then I was inside of it. It was absolutely massive, and it looked like everything was made of eggshell white panels and concave metallic gray beams. It was very bright, but I didn't see any light textures. Everything was that cool white color temperature. At this point, I had no idea what was going on, and I was pretty scared. I was seeing pairs of these gray aliens walking around everywhere. And what looked like normal people, but they looked taller. The grays walked me by some crafts and showed me around, while they were just always staring at me. I think they're supposed to study our reactions to things, because they then led me down to a large hallway and showed me a massive viewing window and just stared at me more. They were really looking for a reaction out of me. As I looked into the window, I saw the black void of space and the glow of the earth below us. This is when I freaked the F out. I started hyperventilating and ran off, in which I ended up being captured and hauled off into a small room with a crap load of what looked like screens, tubes, hoses, and tools. There was also a large insectoid gray type being that had a pale skin, a tiny coat, maybe backpack type thing on its back, and it had the small gray look at me down on the central table that was propped up at a reclined angle. That's when I became paralyzed. Things became fuzzy, and they started sticking needles in me. I'm pretty sure they put something in behind my ear, because I had a small rice bump behind my ear at the point of my neck that I remember them sticking the needles into. It's been there ever since, and I've tried convincing myself that it's just been a zit or a piece of cartilage, but I've never been able to pop it or cut it open. I'll even rub it as a nervous habit. And now I have a fear of needles and going to the dentist for some effing reason. It's also making a high-pitched ringing noise, but I assume it's just tetanus, right? The whole time during my abduction, the two gray aliens were staring at me with their large, golden brown eyes. At this point, their eyes were no longer black voids, so I assume it was some kind of filter of light, maybe? I don't know. Every time I would look at them, I would get a shocking mental resonance travel through my body and a deep sense of falling, spinning, and wanting to lift up and move around. Then the messages would come. Random stuff. Math, symbols, maps, pictures, memories, animals, landscapes, words, messages, visions, and all kinds of extremely random stuff. These things were not our enemies, but they weren't necessarily our friends either. They don't have human morals, and they view us as just being observed, controlled, and directed. They are the keepers of our planet, and we are merely the next iteration, the next civilization printed off the line, given knowledge and rules, and tested to make sure that it works. Sure, we have free will, but there are limitations. They have a plan that involves our evolutionary track based off our collective choices and their willingness to let it continue or not. That's why they warn experiencers about the harm of technologies. Our development with weapons is causing us to be viewed in a bad light with them, and our usage of nukes affected their Earth as well. There's an ultimatum in place, and governors are struggling to obey. After their testing were done, they brought me out of the room, back to the large area I was first brought to, and then a large flash happened, and I was in my room. I was home, and then they were gone like nothing happened. I was gone for an entire night, and I grew up living with crippling insomnia because I was so scared that they'll come back to me. I hope they don't. My dad told me his experience tonight. He was 20 years old at the time. This was in the mid-80s. The night before the deer hunt opened in Utah, he was driving to meet his family for the weekend of camping and hunting. It was late at night, and he was driving down a secluded 2-lane highway in Gunston, Utah. He saw what he thought was a search and rescue helicopter off in the distance. It had a spotlight shining out at the bottom of it, and it was moving slowly to his direction. He pulled his truck over and sat in the hood of his truck to watch the helicopter. As the helicopter came closer, he realized that it wasn't a helicopter at all. It was that traditional oval-shaped UFO. He said it was completely silent and had lights around it on the outside of it. The strangest part of him was that the searchlight coming out of the bottom was not reflecting light past its borders, and it didn't touch the ground. The light cut off in a straight line at the bottom of the cone. He was watching the craft for about 3 to 5 minutes as it somehow slowly came towards him about 200 yards off the ground. The craft and light came over the top of him, and the light did not illuminate him at all. The craft then shot off into the sky like a shooting star. My dad was told by his family that he was white as a ghost when he arrived to the camp later. My dad isn't huge into aliens at all and has only ever been told a small hand of people about this experience. He doesn't have any clue what it was and has never seen anything similar like that again. With this information, do with it what you will. For starters, I'm female, 33. I do have an interest in paranormal, UFOlogy, and other high strangeness fields of study, but I'm not aggressive or any particular narrative. I'm just a very curious and open-minded type of person. Take what you like and leave the rest type of thing. I try to engage with ideas, not beliefs. I would say I'm very reasonable. I have no history of mental illness. I'm pretty average and introverted. Married, no kids, homebodied. I have lots of hobbies and I'm close with my family. I work in a home health care for the elderly, and part-time I'm teaching assistant at an Ivy League. The events I'm sharing here today are truly uncanny. It is between myself, my older sister, who is 34, who is visiting right now but permanently lives in the United Kingdom with their partner and child, and my husband, who is 30 years old right now, who plays in a band in his spare time and is currently out of town for a small tour. Part 1. My first encounter. The first event occurred several years back. We all lived together in a small New England city, along with a fourth roommate who slept throughout this whole thing. In the top floor apartment of a 3-family building, at the time, I worked in a restaurant industry and was basically nocturnal. One night, after closing the bar at about 3 in the morning, I got a phone call from my sister. Immediately, I knew something was terribly wrong. She worked as a preschool teacher and should have been sleeping. I assumed someone had died. She sounded terrified. Apparently, she and my husband had woken up at the exact same time to what sounded like a baby crying outside the apartment building. It's important to note that my sister has always had a deep affinity for children. She immediately ran to the door, thinking someone had thrown a baby into a dumpster or something. My husband appeared in the hallway behind her, and they just stared at one another for a minute. My husband said, "Is that a baby?" And my sister went to undo the lock to investigate downstairs. Instantly, some lizard brain thing happened that made her freeze. She said her most primal fear response hit her hard. It sounds really bizarre, but basically, when she's really extremely afraid, the muscles around her groin and inner thighs tighten, shake, and go cold. And this happened then. And so she called me. I think to give herself strength, or to confirm that she wasn't losing her mind. We talked about like it was last night when she came over for her sister's night. As I mentioned earlier, she's currently in town visiting, so this is all refreshed in my mind, even though it was quite a while back. We are very close, always have been. So, on the phone, she explained the situation to me, said she was very creeped out, but also very concerned about a potential infant that needed help. And I'm standing in the basement of my bar holding a case of beer, and my instincts were screaming at me, "Danger, danger." I apparently yelled, "Do not open the effing door." I said, "If it doesn't stop, call the police. But trust your gut. This is a gift of fear. Listen to it." When I got home, I ran upstairs, and they were sitting together in the living room with the lights on, looking kind of shell-shocked. The sound ceased immediately, but my sister took her hand off her padlock and decided not to go outside. They both told me that when they really stopped to listen to the sound, they realized that it sounded off somehow, almost like a recording. The cries just stayed the same pitch with the same rhythm, same cadence, over and over again. Unnatural. You can really call it Uncanny Valley, but it was as if someone left a baby doll with a noise box in the trash somehow. It just got a string pulled, but it was so loud all around them. Neither of them could figure out which direction it came from. She hypnotized, wincing, that it felt like something was trying to draw her out of the house, out at night. That she didn't logically know this. She couldn't prove it, but it was the only thing that explained her intense fear response. Funnily enough, it didn't occur to me that this crying sound was apparently so loud that it woke up two people on opposite sides of the apartment. And yet, I couldn't hear a thing over the phone. But I wondered about it now. I wonder if they were hearing it only in their heads. And that's only why I couldn't hear it, nor our other roommate, who slept through the entire thing. And there weren't no dogs barking in our block or other people outside rubbernecking. I thought of the stories that I read and the research I had done on folklore from all around the world of creatures that mimic the sound of loved ones or children to lure people into them. We never figured out and never heard about anything about that again. So, basically, sister and husband hear baby crying from every direction. They are compelled to go outside to investigate, but some primal fear stops them, and they call me. I advise them to listen to their instinct and stay the hell inside. We never figure out what happened, but it remains a creepy experience. Part 2. The Dreams. I'll try to make this as brief as uncomplicated as possible. Our brother passed away from cancer about a decade ago. It was very traumatizing for our family. He was the oldest sibling and very much a protector. A military guy, super charismatic and successful. He was the glue that held us together, so to speak. It was a very dark time when we lost him, and none of us were ever the same. A lot of us, my siblings and I, dabble in spirituality. We were all recovering Catholics, and though we don't go to church or attend masses anymore, we each have our own way of communicating with God, or whatever you want to call it, through tough times. We try to tune in some degree. I guess you could say, in my case, I practice meditation even though I'm not a natural at it. It takes quite a lot of time and effort for me to get into it. I struggle with stray thoughts and directions or quite a bit, but I do try, and I recognize how beneficial the practice can be. My husband and I both like to read the material of philosophy, Buddhism, and other things like astral projection and lucid dreaming. Well, as I mentioned earlier, my sister is here visiting for the United Kingdom right now, and my husband is away on a tour. Last night, she slept over, and we had a fantastic day and night together. It's been a long time since we had some time alone like this. We had some great conversations, one of which revisited the experience that I encountered above, part 1. We talked about David Gruch, the UFO whistleblowers, and the feeling that The Sims is breaking down, where all the dogs before an earthquake, so agitated, anxious, and freaked out with no understanding of what's causing it. We also listened to the Law of One material, which I knew about and find interesting, but don't engage with too often. Then we got into dreams, and whoo, buddy. She told me that about our dreams and from back when we lived in the old apartment together. Our brother was there in her dream. She was so happy to see him, but then he spoke to her. He said her name out loud, and she instantly knew that something was wrong. She recoiled and said, "You're not my brother," and woke up. She had the exact same dream days later. And then she had another dream. It was our brother again, but it was really him this time, she insisted. He hugged her, and he didn't speak, but it was like she felt the words telepathically. She got the message loud and clear. He said her name and said, "No," and said she knew that this was a warning. Like, "Don't listen to that thing impersonating me. Protect yourself. Now, wake up." The only time I've ever seen my brother was during a group meditation that I actually did with my mom years after his death. During COVID, lockdowns actually, I didn't even want to attend, but it seemed to mean a lot to her. So I was like, totally, I'm in. And then proceed to have the most profound and impactful meditation I have ever had in my life. It was such a blessing. I was about to leave the meditation when something told me to turn around in my mind. And there he was, standing at the shore of a beach underneath the stars, his back to me, just waiting patiently for me to acknowledge him. And when I tell you, I ran to him and jumped to his arms. I was a sobbing mess. I wasn't speaking, but I was transmitting everything I felt and how much I'm sorry that I wasn't able to reach out to him sooner and instead have closed myself off as I processed with his loss. He was just smiling and hugging me. I felt his arms. It was incredibly emotional. I've never experienced anything like this before since. And he didn't speak, but I could feel his message clearly from within. Just one word, elated and smug. Finally. My sister and I discussed all about this. I found it really odd that in both of our dreams, with the real him, he didn't speak out loud. It was just a telepathic connection or something. Like as soon as he transmitted the frequency, we received it and understood what he was trying to say. The meaning was very clear, but it was felt beyond language somehow. Anyway, we went to bed last night and I did a meditation beforehand. I was pretty inspired by the raw material stuff. It was seeking higher dimensional connection and also protection, always. In seeking love, unity, understanding. It didn't go too well. I was very distracted and my mind was kind of buzzing. But when I fell asleep, I fell into the most horrific nightmares I've ever had. I had lucid enough to know that I was dreaming a lot of the time, but it still felt too real to me. The gist is that in my dream, my sister and I were in a hotel. We had a big suite, and these people kept coming in to the common area and trying to stay over. We were like, "No, sorry, you can't stay here. You need to leave." But more and more kept showing up. Then all hell broke loose. These were not people. They looked like people. They were trying to use us, harvest something from us, but they definitely were there to harm us. I specifically remember them putting their hands on my forehead and pulling something out, extracting it, something vital and intangible to me. And then everywhere I look, I realized that these things were all over the place, just walking around the world with me. The veil had been lifted. I could see them for what they really are. Mimics, interpools, these people who look like people, but weren't. A strange shimmer in their face, very subtle, but they were wearing human masks to hide what's underneath. My sister was still sleeping next to me, and she said I kept waking up screaming, on and off for hours. I had several false awakenings back to back. I would wake up in my bed, so relieved to be out of that horrible nightmare, and then realize that I was actually still asleep. It was actual torture. It felt endless. I couldn't get out of it. Apparently, I was calling for my cat, who behaved quite a bit like a dog, and he would come and sit next to me while I slept, dutifully and very concerned, which calmed me down somewhat. But the false awakenings thing was insane and was totally foreign. It was something like was being played for my psyche. It knew I could, and it was messing with me on purpose to prove something that I was like powerless. I was so angry and unsettled by this experience that I don't know how to react. I called my husband this morning on my way to work to tell him about my nightmare. I was like, I'm smudging the entire place with sage when I get home. He replied, I got some messed up dreams this week too. Last week, I dreamed that you were there, and I went up to you and you started talking to me. And I don't know why, but I knew something was off. I said to you, you're not my wife, and it became very clear that I was right. I haven't even told my sister, shared about her own dreams, that something was using my brother's face as a way to lure her in, and she said the exact same words to it. So this is really a shock to me. And to top it off, last night, while I was having a nightmare that I just discussed, 1,000 miles away, my husband was in a hotel room with his bandmate, and they woke up from the nightmare that someone or something was trying to get into the room that they were both asleep in. They both felt very unsettled and disturbed by it, and are excited to get back out on the road. So basically, the three of us are sharing eerily similar nightmares and dreams. Even from a vast distance away, they seem related to the mimic experienced several years ago. And it crescendoed with a horrific nightmare in my house last night, right after a meditation, seeking connection with the higher dimensional beings. So, conclusions. What the hell is this all about? What does it mean? Am I overreacting? On its own, it's just a terrible nightmare, even though I have never had a nightmare like this. But when I start to stack it up with all the other stuff, it starts to feel like a pattern that's forming. Us three seem to have a connection in this weird way, or like something unexplained is affecting all of us. I felt so agitated and anxious all the time. The only way I can describe it is as if I had like a psychic attack. It's been lingering over me ever since I really woke up, and I can't get this feeling out of my head. And all three of us are sharing these experiences, dreams and feelings, even when we're very far away from each other. It's just too weird for me to ignore. Does anyone have any advice or theories about this? Has anyone have anything similar to this? Did I let something in bad by mistake? Is there something I could do to protect myself? Is it an extraterrestrial? It may sound silly, but I can't help. I can't help but I feel so betrayed having experienced this right after meditation. Thank you in advance if you read this novel. I really appreciate your help. I hope you enjoyed these true alien sighting stories, Volume 1. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Please consider subscribing, as you'd be helping me reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you are asleep, well, maybe you can hear me in your dream world. Keep dreaming, as is the only time you can escape reality. Enjoy the slumber world.